welcome back to Room 237, back with another review. And this is kind of a random review. This is a cult classic from the 80s that I've had for a while, and I've been meaning to get to it. I actually watched and got ready to do a review some months ago, and for whatever reason, I just never got around to it. But this is one that took me a while to see, actually. It's one I've known about for years. I've seen the prop, I've heard the title, heard a lot of people talk about it. I actually thought it was a major, big, fan favorite from the 80s. I guess it's still pretty much in the cult status. But it's a film from Larry Cohen, written and directed by Larry Cohen, who had kind of a big name in cult classics, horror, science fiction. I don't know too much about him, but many say this is his best film, and it's 1985's The Stuff. Are you eating it, or is it eating you? And yes, I do know that there is a Blu-ray by Aiello out there. I just picked this up because it was cheaper. Now, the only other Larry Cohen film that I know for a fact that I have is his 1973 film, It's Alive, which I'll get to. I love this cover too, by the way. The only other one that moderately close that I've reviewed would be the 2007 torture porn film Captivity, which he didn't direct, he wrote. Because I think after a certain point, he stopped directing and pretty much stayed with writing. But I know he did other films, like he did Q the Winged... Is that what it's called? Q the Winged Serpent? And Ambulance. I know there's probably a lot more that... Return to Salem's Lot. The sequels to It Lives. Oh, I didn't know he wrote Phone Booth. But, let's see. Also a lot of blaxploitation films. Q, 1982. Yeah, Q the Winged Serpent. Sometimes I just see it as Q, and I don't know if it's the same film. Full Moon High. Return to Salem's Lot. Wrote Maniac Cop. Okay, wrote Maniac Cop 2 and 3. The 93 version of Body Snatchers. Okay. And so yeah, kind of done a lot of cult films, and many people have said that this is their favorite or his best. So far, I would have to agree. It's been a long time since I've seen It's Alive, but this is a very different kind of film, especially for 1985. It's a satire. It's black comedy, it's horror, it's science fiction, and it's a big satire on consumerism, and the American lifestyle and consumerism. Kind of like what Child's Play did with the consumerism of children's toys and the new hottest item. This is like that, but with junk food and just shit that the FDA just approves. And it's dated, but it's charming. It has a charm to it. I guess Larry Cohen is not one of the easiest people to get along with, but even though he says he likes to make his movies fun for his actors, has a great cast. In the lead, who was also in Return to Salem's Lot, Q the Winged Serpent, this one English, Italian, and German hybrid kind of giallo film, Bloodlink. Michael Moriarty, Paul Sorvino has a supporting role. Danny Aiello, of course, from Once Upon a Time in America, Jacob's Ladder. Garrett Morris of the original SNL cast. Also, Scott Bloom is the kid, but his brother Brian Bloom plays his brother in this. And Brian Bloom was also in Once Upon a Time in America. He played young Patsy. And Andrea Markovici. Basically, there's this white substance that comes out of the earth. You know, a, a, moves and bubbles, and it looks like little mushroom things kind of come out of the ground, and this one worker nearby tastes it, has his buddy taste it, and then they're able to get it packaged, manufactured, shipped everywhere, because apparently it's the greatest thing humans have ever tasted. It's a huge hit. There's actually a lot of commercials, which I thought was kind of clever. Because if you're doing a satire of consumerism, you got to have a lot of like parody kind of commercials. But this stuff also has some. It's sentient, and it takes over your brain. It takes over your brain. It makes it go into like survival mode. It just wants the stuff spread to as many people as possible. It wants to protect itself. In a way, it's kind of like the Thing, I guess. And while this is going on, Michael Moriarty plays this former FBI agent who's now an industrial saboteur. He's hired by rivals to sabotage the competition. Which at first I think he's just trying to figure out like the secret formula. But then when he realizes that this stuff is actually bad and that this stuff could be evil or really dangerous, he sets out to sabotage it. And that coincides with Scott Bloom's character of, what was his name, Jason, who's just this young kid, and again, his brother plays his brother, who notices one night that the stuff moves on its own, and his family's taken over by the stuff. He runs away, and then, what was his name, Mo Rutherford, sees him and picks him up. And then they set out to sabotage it together, along with Andrea Marcovicci's character, who was like a head of marketing. And you have what was her name? I always forget her name. I did notice that Abe Vigoda, Tessio from The Godfather, he's in one of these commercials, along with Clara Peller, the Where's the Beef lady, except she says Where's the Stuff. There's a lot of like MTV style commercials. And apparently this was Myra Sorvino'S first role, Paul Sorvino's daughter. And this also has quite the collection of special effects talent, because you have Ed French, who was in Blood Rage and Terminator 2. Rick Stratton, who did Fright Night and Edward Scissorhands. Steve Neal, who did Ghostbusters and also Fright Night. They all bring different things, because you have crazy practical effects with scenes like this. You have optical effects and shots being superimposed and green screen. You have a rotating room for one scene, which actually that rotating room is the exact same set that a year prior Johnny Depp got sucked into the bed on Nightmare on Elm Street. And it's just a fun, low-budget film. I've heard Larry Cohen more or less kind of self-funds his own movies. It was made for like $1.7 million, and it did not make a lot of money because, who was it? Was it New Line? Doesn't even say on this. Whoever it was, they wanted a straightforward horror film. They sold it and marketed it as a straightforward horror film, and Cohen never sent dailies, so they didn't really know what kind of movie they were getting. And so Cohen attributes that to the film's not so great success. Although I will say, the container that the stuff is in, the pint container, is probably one of the more iconic horror props of the 80s. I would like to have one of those. Also, I guess it was much longer, and I can definitely tell because there's some scenes where the scene will play out and then we'll cut to. It seems like we cut to a scene like halfway through. Because Danny Aiello plays this one guy that Moriarty is interviewing, and Danny Aiello's dog is kind of growling when they talk about the stuff. So then Moriarty leaves, and Danny Aiello is like, "You want a treat, Ben? Good. I'll have one too. I think we both deserve a treat." And you get that the dog's possessed by the stuff. So then we cut to Moriarty doing whatever, and when we cut back to Aiello, he's like on the ground, or on the floor, hiding under a desk, trying to call for help, and the dog's like barking at him. So it definitely feels like a lot of stuff was cut. Yeah, I guess there was more. What Cohen said, both funny scenes were cut, but also scenes to make it a bit more serious and sophisticated. Uh, yeah, a lot of the green screen stuff does look really dated, but it does give it charm. I mean, I don't just watch movies to be entertained. I watch them because I love the art of filmmaking. And even if something looks dated, I love just seeing how they did it. And at one point, the kid Jason hides in one of those big, uh, cylinder trucks, kind of like a gas truck, but that's how they transport the stuff. He's hiding in an empty one at the stuff factory, and workers are pumping stuff into the truck. And so there's a shot of him sort of going back and forth, but on the green screen, it looks like there's just this growing mound of stuff coming towards him. Or an aerial shot after the factory's destroyed of like a giant lake of stuff forming. You can tell it's green screen and superimposed. But it has charm to it. It's kind of like the optical effects equivalent of the practical effects in, say, Sleepaway Camp or Basket Case. Which Larry Cohen does kind of remind me of Frank Henenlotter, just cult film director, makes very specific kind of high concept films. Maybe not high concept, but very unique films. I would say I like Basket Case more than this, but it does do a good job with all of its jabs and pokes, with its satire. Like when we see just how big the stuff has got, it shows that there's this one like 24-hour ice cream shack of the stuff, and it's right between a McDonald's and a KFC. Um, Probably my favorite scene is when Jason's family, his brother and his parents, force him to eat the stuff like they're already turned. And I think this plays into the satire as well, on top of just being very creepy. I always find like Stepford Wives, like very like, well, go ahead, Jason, it's good, like all the almost robotic seriousness or like robotic normalcy. And Jason even says like, "Why are you talking like you're in a commercial?" Because it's like they're trying to sell him the stuff, even though they're talking to him. And he dumps it out and eats shaving cream instead, but then gets sick, and then that's when they turn on him. That's probably my favorite sequence. I will say the movie does kind of take a turn once Paul Sorvino comes in, because he's kind of like this disgraced uh, conspiracy theory colonel who the three team up with to kind of storm this factory and then put a broadcast out on the radio about how bad the stuff is. Because when they find the stuff factory, they see they're just taking it out of the ground and then shipping it off. And I think it does say that the FDA, everyone that approved the stuff, is out of the country, resigned, or on vacation. But it does say that the FDA approved it, no problem. It does. I do feel like it becomes almost a different movie when that portion comes in. I do like Garrett Morris's role as Chocolate Chip Charlie, who I think was kind of based on Famous Amos. I like Garrett Morris, and I think he's funny in this. He's a guy who got beat out by the stuff, and he helps Mo as well. But his effect when we see the stuff come out of him, because pretty much when the stuff is done with you, or like when it's done with you, or if you're just no use to it anymore, it just comes out of you like this. And Garrett Morris probably has the best practical effect in the whole film. I mean, his mouth is like wide like that. It's crazy looking. And yeah, it doesn't look the most realistic, but I love cheap practical effects as well. I mean, I love the stop motion in Basket Case. And that's in the radio studio. And even the glass, like when Mo goes to break the glass in the booth to save Jason and Andrea Marcovici, I think the glass is like an optical effect. It doesn't look like it's there. The fire's all optical. I don't know if that's because of the safety rules with the kid being in the room or what. And it looks like an optical effect of the remaining glass in the window. So, like, watching it, I'm just like, why is there so many optical effects for stuff like breaking glass or filling a truck up with a kid in it? I mean, we see the kids in the enclosed truck, but I think a lot of it was also because what was used for this stuff for most scenes was like Haagen-Dazs ice cream, yogurt, ice cream, well, or other ice cream, or shaving cream. And a lot of scenes do look like models. So I'm going to say maybe it was like a model of a truck with that coming in, and then they superimposed that. But like, when the stuff is really coming out of things, or when the factory's exploding, I think that's a model shot, and I love model shots as well. The best model shots is still the 1926 film Faust. Actually, I would say the best practical effect would either be Garrett Morris or when it's coming out of the mattress. Because after they go to interview people at the factory, they say, "Oh, we have a hotel set up for you," and the stuff is actually in the mattress and in the pillow. And this one guy comes in, but the stuff just is spraying out of the mattress and pinning the guy against the wall. That's the one with the rotating room. And if you look at how it's coming out of the mattress, it looks a lot like how when the blood's coming out of the bed in Nightmare on Elm Street. And I was just like, I bet that's a rotating room. And it was. So yeah, the effects are dated, but they're still fun. Also, I think what's cut is as they're broadcasting, they're actually, before I get to that, another thing that was used for this stuff, for when people really had to be covered in it, when it wasn't fire extinguisher foam, it was this made foam that consisted of a bunch of like ground up fish guts and fish bones, and I guess it was an absolute nightmare. So there's that. But when they as they're putting the broadcast of how the stuff is bad and mind control and how it was just approved and comes straight out of the ground with no one really looking at it, it cuts straight to like public burnings. There's like this huge pyre of stuffed cartons being burned, a stuffed shack, the one in between McDonald's and KFC being blown up. And I'm sure McDonald's and KFC was done on purpose and in the shot. Again, satire against consumerism and junk food and stuff. But then Mo goes to, I guess the guys that were really in charge of running the stuff, it forces them to eat a bunch of it. Which they're talking about this new product called The Taste, packaged exactly the same. Which I used to work at fast food. I used to work at Burger King, and you could literally take a Whopper. I think they did this in New York. Just rotate the picture, call it the left-handed burger, and people will swarm to the restaurant to try the newest thing. It's fucking ridiculous. I hated it. So yeah, released this new item called The Taste, and you see a picture, it's exactly the same. But he and Jason forced them to eat a bunch of the stuff, and then cops show up, because I think the stuff is illegal to have at this point. And then the last scene is like these obvious, shady drug dealers getting cases of it off a van, and then like, seeing if it's cut. So now it's on the black market. But I thought, I'm sure it was clever back then. I still think it's clever and fun and entertaining. It's funny. It's still relevant today. People are still, gobbling up anything you put in front of them. Maybe a slow down some because of everything having to be gluten free, but it works as a black comedy. It works as science fiction. It works as horror, and the satire works. It is very entertaining. It's a good low budget film, well acted. I thought everyone did a good job. I guess most of, if not pretty much all of Michael Moriarty's lines were improv. So kudos to him. Plenty of recognizable people even earlier in their careers, like Paul Sorvino. He was still fun. And I like the idea of it's kind of like The Thing meets Invasion of the Body Snatchers, but done in the style of like a delicious dessert treat, poking fun at consumerism and the American lifestyle. I think what really helped a lot of that satire is showing a lot of these commercials. And yeah, it was dated to do where's the stuff instead of where's the beef. But sometimes things being dated can be fun. And I think this is a fun movie. I mean, as far as consumerism, maybe more materialism with Child's Play, I do like that a little bit more. But for its budget, I still think it's well made. And, I'll still take cheap, transparent optical effects and superimposed shots over just terrible CGI any day. Oh, and what I meant to say was, when she's doing the broadcast, then we cut straight to the public burnings of all the stuff products. There's several times where we cut to something and it's that abrupt, like I mentioned earlier with Danny Aiello and the dog, where it's definitely a movie where you can tell there was a lot cut out. But apparently last year, the longer cut was found. I don't know if that's what the Arrow release is or not, but yeah. I'm sure there's more that I could say about it, but it's a fun film. I mean, I guess I might have even rather this had been sort of like The Blob or the original Body Snatchers, where it's just a small town being overtaken by the stuff. Maybe the satire would have worked that much. Which actually they talk about that in this because they see this small town in Georgia has been pretty much deserted. And that the stuff is kind of, these smaller towns, were not many people watching, they all eat the stuff. They're all turned into stuffies. And so they have to go to a larger city. Maybe I just would have been more entertained if it sure, maybe the satire might not have worked that much, but maybe it would have been more fun or entertaining to me if it was like the Blob, like the small town being overtaken. Sure, we've seen that done 1,000 times, but I mean, it's still good. I would just say it definitely feels like a different film once Paul Sorvino comes in. It kind of made me think of Swamp Thing, is like that a hard turn, but it eventually gets back to the stuff. And yeah, I like the idea of just this sentient, almost kind of pod people, like a food version of the pod people, essentially, and it becoming like the hottest food item. And still, my favorite sequence is Jason with his family, and they're just like these Stepford Wife, robotic, creepy, trying to force become one of us. But still fun and entertaining. But that is the stuff from 1985. Thank you for watching.